Welcome back to another episode of That's Business. Today's guest, Victoria, is an experienced executive search professional, the self-published author of a creative nonfiction book, Self-Assembly, and a professional writer with a background in leadership advisory, market intelligence, and business communications. Her essays around wellness, mindset, and investing in oneself have been published on sites like Collective World, a creative network from Thought Catalog with over 30 million monthly readers. Victoria, I'm so excited to talk about this. Your bio alone, the just creative genius that you are. I want to throw it back first. Were you always a creative growing up? What was your childhood like? Did you know you wanted to be this writer or author?
Thank you for having me on. I think growing up, I did. I think a lot of people don't always know what they want to do or what they're passionate about. But I feel like writing and that creative energy was just always a part of how I approached life and kind of reflected and connected with myself. I was always a kid that was really into English class and studying and going to school and reading. And I feel like a lot of people growing up aren't into that. They just want to play outside. And I did playing outside too, but just have other interests and passions. And yeah, I think that was my outlet for a while for, again, getting to know myself better. So it did always feel like something I knew I was going to do in publishing a book. And I hope to be able to publish other books in the future and keep building on that. But I could definitely explain a little bit of how I think that relates to me growing up. I live in New York and grew up in New York. And I have two younger siblings and grew up in a family that was really, really always supportive of me. And I learned a lot through. But we definitely had our fair share of dysfunction and things that I think helped me see the world at a really young age from a mature perspective and really embraced life. I think a lot sooner than a lot of my peers. I always felt like I was kind of one step ahead and always thinking like an adult as a kid, which was good and bad in ways. I think it set me up for success a lot in my life, but I think I missed out on certain things. Sure. But either way, I think I really got an early jump on thinking about career and how I wanted to set myself up, especially now, being in my early 20s for success. I think that whole combination kind of propelled me to embrace writing and my full-time career and everything else that I juggle. So,
I know focused your degrees on writing. You're a certified professional resume writer. You have your SHRM certification. Just the laundry list of amazing things you've accomplished already. And obviously that whole concept of kind of being that continuous learner, being a school person. And I remember when you told me that, I was like, that's not surprising with your list of amazing accomplishments you've done this far. But how have you juggled that, being in your early 20s, getting these certifications, writing a freaking book? Where do you find the time to do it all?
I think, and this is something that I try to tell my friends and siblings, but I think I run my life like a business or an enterprise. I think it comes down to really knowing your values and yourself really well and having a plan for yourself and being proactive about how you schedule your time and what you give energy towards. I think that there's a lot of people that look to their job to set their schedule for them, or to people that they surround themselves with to set how often they'll work out or how much they go out with their friends, or there's so many different areas. And yeah, it is a balance, but I think it comes down to knowing yourself really well and surrounding yourself with people that are going to push and motivate you, really taking ownership over being educated around what you want to give time towards. I think obviously that has come, especially in the past few years as I've been scaling my career, with a lot of really early mornings and being disciplined with your time and knowing when to say yes or no to plans and who to keep around you. It definitely isn't for everyone, I don't think, to be that intense with their time. And I think it served me really, really well. I don't think those habits need to be the same way in every phase of life. But I think for that chapter that I've been in, it was necessary to achieve the things that I've done. And yeah, I think it's just a mindset decision around how you want to build and grow as a person.
A lot of early mornings. I mean, I even told my boyfriend, I'm like, dang, I just want to be her when I grow up because 6:30 a.m., 7:15, you're sending me messages. I'm like, damn, girl, get it. Like, I want to be as organized as you one day. So that's amazing. And a lot of this too, and what you talk about, especially in your book and everything you've been published with, is a lot around mindset. So of course, with the rise of mental health issues and everything, like we talked about before starting recording, I mean, the craziness going on in the world, how do you kind of keep that mentality or that kind of lightheartedness that is such the essence of you? I mean, how do you kind of keep that going on those tough days?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's something that I struggled for a really, really long time with, and I'm very open about with family and friends and people that I meet, and obviously you too, but in the business world, I think it's really important because there's so many outside contexts that impact your ability to show up and stay motivated and keep a positive perspective. And I think developing an outlook on life that's fueled more with like optimism and belief and confidence in yourself is essential to keeping the grip at the end of the day. And maybe this is just through a lot of life experiences that I've endured, but I think you just always have to remember that things are always working for the best for you, like no matter what it looks like in the moment, like getting laid off or going through something like physically or personally, like getting broken up with, or so many things that happen to you in life. It can be really, really easy to just feel defeated and like you're losing, quote unquote. But like I've just developed this mentality that nothing is ever really a loss because the things that you gain from reflecting on what has happened and the person that you become to really address those things makes your life better in the long run. And even if you can't see that in this moment. So I don't know. I think it's just a combination of like really being in tune with yourself and keeping your values at the center. You only have one life, so you just gotta like find ways to maybe make it a little bit more lighthearted. Otherwise, yeah, it's easy to get weighed down with everything you see online and comparison and stuff. So yeah, just keeping that focus.
No, it is true. And I think kind of having the light humor to it, or like, I acknowledge this sucks. And one of the conversations we've had in the last few weeks that actually, I think it was December when you're like, how's everything? I'm like, my life's falling apart. And we just sat there and laughed and you're like, oh, I could feel that. So I think it is different. I think when you have the right people around you, like you said, it does make a difference of being open and saying, hey, this sucks right now, but I'll be fine. And that lightheartedness is such a better energy source than the depressive episodes, the life sucks, this is awful, everything's going to end. So I like that. I love that. Now, I want to talk about publishing your book. Tell us the whole story, where you came up with this idea. So many people just kind of get their own heads like, oh my God, this is vulnerable. I don't want to write a book, but tell us that story because I'm just in awe of you.
Thank you. I mean, it's hard to necessarily say how it happened. I think I, again, just kind of knew that like when you make like a bucket list of like, what do I want to do in my life? Like writing a book was just something that I feel like I knew I was going to do. It wasn't something I had to like decide to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Growing up, I was always writing and like saving my work. And in college, I had a writing and rhetoric minor. So I was in different like creative writing classes and like programs and workshops. And I started building a pretty big portfolio just naturally. It was around the time when I was graduating and I started my first job in executive recruiting where I was like, okay, I might not be doing writing full time, but like I'm still really passionate about this and I want to share this like lens with the world. And I think a lot of my book touches on, like we were just speaking about, a lot of that mindset and wellness advice that's going to help you like see through your own personal development journey. And I felt like it was something that was kind of therapeutic for me, like as I was writing it, because it was kind of like a culmination of a lot of the work that I had done over the years. And I knew that no matter what, even if one person read it and benefited from it, like it was a win. And again, it was more of like a personal, something I always really wanted to do. And so, yeah, I mean, writing it was definitely, again, something that came down to really early wake ups and blocking off time in my schedule and not having as much of a social life and making sacrifices in certain areas. And again, like I don't necessarily always condone that. Like it's really, really important to have balance. But I think for me in that phase, like I was willing to go to that length to like get it done. And yeah, I ended up hiring an editor and a cover art designer to be able to like really package it well, since I was writing it and self-publishing it. I wanted to get some like professional input. But yeah, I mean, I think in this world, like it's never been easier to share ideas and get published and express yourself online. And I think it just comes down to like, if you have a really positive message to put out there, like there are people that are going to receive it and there is an audience for you. And you just have to really want to make that impact and believe in yourself and not really place the success on how much money you make or how many people buy it, but more knowing that you contributed to the world in that sense, something you're passionate about. So yeah, it was definitely a journey, but something I just came really naturally to me. Even the outline for the book, I knew exactly what I wanted to say. And that's not common, but I think I was just meant to be.
It was meant to be. Absolutely. You made a great point of it's never been easier to publish or never easier to meet other audiences and all over the world. And I love the digital age because of that. A lot of your career juggling 5 million things. I want to talk about you being in your early 20s. This is what y'all need to realize. Like Victoria's in her early 20s and reading her bio of the insanity that she's accomplished so far. We've talked about this where some people like, oh, this generation's so lazy. And it's every generation that's the youngest is the lazy ones, things like that. So thinking about your generation or maybe someone that's coming out of college, in high school, I mean, what advice do you have for them to kind of not go down that path of, oh my God, I don't know anything, or kind of that negativity that society often puts on them?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had people that like gave me certain pointers when I was growing up. I feel like you kind of feel lost and like you feel like you're like, am I the only person that's feeling like this confused? Yes. And then I think as you get older, you realize that everyone is always confused. Like even me now, like there are certain things where I'm like, oh, and you just kind of like lean on your network, I think, and the close people around you and try to delve through. But I think for me specifically, I just always had a really like innate drive to work and to accomplish a lot of the goals that I had for myself. And I think I was just extremely self-motivated. Like I've always just been like the person that would never procrastinate and like was very good about staying. Like I would like do my homework before I would go play soccer or play with my friends. It was always like the work came first, if that makes sense, at a young age. And I was just really into like signing myself up for anything that I could do that would help me develop professionally. So I joined different clubs in high school and I was always in all the AP classes and was just like really, really driven. And even in college too, like I ended up graduating with a sociology major because I wasn't even really sure exactly what I wanted to do. But I just always knew in the back of my head that like no matter what path I picked, like I would figure it out. And I think it comes down to like, again, knowing what you want to contribute to the world and what you want to focus your studies on, and then like building a lifestyle and a mindset around it that's going to support you getting to that place. And it's much easier said than done, I think. I don't know if that's the best answer, but it's a balance.
What's that like not procrastinating? Because I don't know that life, but gosh, I'm going to say it again. I want to be you when I grow up. Like, my gosh.
I mean, there's definitely days when I'm like not feeling my best. And I feel like building that into your schedule is important too. Like when you know you need a break and not to burn yourself out. But I think it's more that I get anxiety about things not being done. Getting them done makes me not anxious, whereas not doing something will make me stressed, if that makes sense. So I guess it's just like an internal drive. I don't know.
No, it makes sense. And honestly, I just talked about this with my therapist where I was like, everyone's preaching self-care, self-care. I'm like, yeah, I will go like get a massage. I will take time off. But honestly, where I feel the best is checking things off my to-do list. And he's like, no. That self-care for you of like having this gallbladder surgery, you got that scheduled, you got all that done, you feel better. Like that's your own self-care. And that was just like brain blown away moment of I'm like, oh, like self-care isn't the like take a break and go on vacation. I mean, it can be that way, but it also is if that helps you alleviate your anxiety of answering the emails, getting things done. That's great. So I think that does look different for different people. And it's not that I mean, you are definitely an overachiever, but you're not this like, I don't take breaks, the person in the office that's like, I never miss a day of work. I work 18 hours a day. And you're like, no, stop.
No, no. I think it's like being really proactive with your schedule too. Like I feel like when I approached interviewing for jobs and I don't know, I do know how I guess kind of pulled it off, quote unquote, but I've always looked for jobs that I'm obviously qualified for and feel interested in, but that are going to fit the lifestyle that I want for myself. A lot of my jobs have either been remote or hybrid and have offered some degree of time flexibility in terms of like, you have an appointment during the day, just let us know and you could take like an hour to just have been really, really awesome places to develop and build skills, but also care about you as a person. And I'm really lucky, I think, to have experienced that in all of my full-time roles I've had so far. And it really comes down to, yeah, you want to achieve a lot, but there's so many other factors in life that mean so much more than your work. Like there's so many other family elements and relationships and community building and pursuing your passions. Like you can't get too tied up in the work side. I think it's just, again, like phases of life. Like I think sometimes you could be really heavy in like deadlines and wanting to publish a book or whatever, that of course is going to take a lot of energy, but you may enter a different phase where different things need more. And it's just flexibility.
I want to go back to talking about the flexibility with jobs because we work with a lot of people that honestly, they're wanting the bare minimum flexibility and don't want to be glued to my desk or having to if something happens or whatever. So how have you found these jobs and what are some things or kind of some green flags or red flags you think job seekers can find in an interview or online where you've successfully achieved these flexible environments?
I think the first couple was due in part to COVID and a lot of teams were remote at that point. So I think it was a lot easier to find remote jobs then. I'd say every industry, I think, has a different sentiment around their work culture. Like, obviously, if you're a healthcare worker or in certain fields, you're going to have to be there because your job is an in-person job and that's okay. So I think it's knowing, like, with whatever role that you're pursuing, would that flex sort of schedule even be possible? And I think as you interview, obviously you want to answer questions appropriately and like you're getting interviewed, but you're also interviewing the people that are interviewing you because you don't want to end up somewhere where you're not aligned in terms of their views on like work-life balance and wellness and community within the company. Like it is something that's, I think, part of a lot of companies' plans now in order to retain employees, but not every company or manager has like a really thought out or intentional strategy around it. So I think just being kind of candid with like, oh, I don't think you should ask this like right, like in the first interview, but try and get some clarity around like their benefit structure and what types of activities that they do and how they feel about taking appointments during the day, or if they do offer remote work. It's not easy to find. I don't know if I have the best answer for it. I think it's like not easy to find, but something that you kind of have to probe on or like think through a lot of what your job entails and like if it's possible to be on that kind of schedule.
No, I think that's a great answer because like you said, if you're, let's say, a nurse, a doctor, someone where you have to be in person, but now we're doing telehealth. So I think it really does depend on what your job is, but asking about appointments, because that was one of the biggest thing for my employees is your doctors are only open like 8 to 4 or 8 to 5. Because I remember having to take like a day off to do like annuals or just like physical stuff like that. I'm like, I'm wasting my freaking vacation time to do like the normal things to just like make sure I'm healthy. And that always bothered me.
Yeah.
And especially when you're starting off in your career where you're not given like a month of vacation or 5 weeks. It's like, I think I had like a week of vacation that was accrued. So
Yeah.
like, okay, well, don't use it. Don't get sick. You're screwed if you do. It's totally different mentality there. What are you most excited for? Or is there anything you're working on currently for this year?
I turned 25 at the end of last year, and I think there's like certain milestones where you're like, okay, like I'm not 20, 21 anymore. Like I'm growing up. And I think it's been a few years like since I graduated college, and I graduated college really early. That was a thing too. I think that's behind a lot of it. Like I was always the youngest in my grade, and I think I finished school when I was 20. And a lot of people don't finish school until they're like 24, like 25. So I think I was just always like ahead in a way in terms of like just doing things younger. But yeah, I think this year for me is a lot about getting clarity on what the focus zone is. Like you said, like I think I juggle a lot of different things. I have my full-time career, and then I do like other side fun projects and passion work in the book, and trying to develop sort of like a brand around myself. And I think I've done a lot of like the certificates and achievement related things that I wanted to do in my early 20s. And I feel like now it's like reflecting back on all of that and kind of coming up with a strategy going forward of what the next pivot looks like, in a sense, at least for like my passions and my lifestyle. Like I've been living in New York forever. I live in the city now. So, I mean, I think it's an amazing place to live, and there's so many opportunities and people to meet and cultures to experience, and it's amazing. And I think as I've traveled more and have connected with people, like it makes me even more curious to experience life and set it up in a certain way. So I guess there's no like big project right now, but I feel like I'm getting that tingling like feeling of like I know something's coming soon, but I don't know what it'll be yet. That makes sense. I don't know. You're like creative too, and you run a business. Like when there's like something you want to start planning out or doing differently, and you just gotta follow the little creative juice when it's there. So
if you could see my Slack message to myself where I'm like, ooh, this is a good idea. Ooh, that's a good idea. So yes, they're always there. And it's like little spikes of inspiration. And then I look at them and I'm like, oh, that was a stupid idea. Ooh, maybe let's do that again. As we wrap this up, Victoria, what advice do you have for listeners?
I feel like a lot of the stuff that I was saying earlier around being really, really intentional with what you spend time on and like what takes up your energy is probably like the most fundamental reasoning behind how I've built my life so far, and like how I think people can also be really smart about how they do stuff. Like you were saying too, there's one approach that's like kind of being like a victim in situations, like things are happening to you and like everything's stacked against you and you don't have time to do X, Y, Z. And obviously like there's instances when those things are valid, and not to say like shitty things don't happen. Like, of course, yes, they do. And it's important to acknowledge that and feel it. But I also think that the way that you respond to situations is like what is highest in your control, and being able to really take ownership of how much energy you're putting into certain buckets of your life, and like building out a roadmap for yourself that encompasses everything that's important to you is really, really the key, I think, to not just being happy with your work, but being happy with your life in general. And that looks different for everyone, like you were talking about. I think some people want to achieve things that aren't as career related. Like to them, like being a mom, that is like the achievement. That's amazing. For other people, it's really doing really, really well in a sport, or just being a really, really good person in the world and contributing to society and advocating for things. It's really just knowing you and not being scared of being different or having a traditional approach to life. So yeah, I think that's my big one right now.
Oh, you're incredible. Thank you. This has been an amazing episode. And for those of you listening, if you want to connect with Victoria, buy her book, work with her, read some of the published amazingness that is her, head to the show notes and tune in again next week for another episode of That's Business.
If you're looking for a career change and you're not sure where to start, the Resume Rescue can help. Sure, there's no such thing as the perfect fit for everyone, but here at the Resume Rescue, we're on a mission to find the perfect solution for you. Whether it's changing careers, updating a resume, learning LinkedIn, or practicing interviewing, we have you covered. Find us online at theresumerescue.com and find all of our contact info in our show notes.